Why should we study U.S. history? Why should every U.S. citizen know the history of its country? Is it because of what Edmund Burke says, that those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it? That certainly is a good reason. We don't want to repeat things like World Wars, American Civil War, or Great Depression. Moreover, it is our duty as responsible citizens to know how this country and government was formed and how they grew into what they are today. We must know the ideals upon which we base our liberties and freedoms, or else those liberties can be taken away. When I started my APUS history course, I was fairly well convinced of its being a subject that needed to be studied, but I still like to ask why I needed to know each person who has taken part in forming the American story. Often, why I needed to know about someone was obvious, and often why I needed to know them was what I needed to know about them. However, I have occasionally run into someone or an event that is not mentioned in depth, and that seems, after further study, to be more important than the brief blurb in the textbook lets on. Alexander Mitchell Palmer and the Red Scare is one such case. Palmer was born in 1872 of Quaker parents. He went to Swarthmore College, and afterwards studied law for 2 years before being accepted to the bar in 1893. 12 years later, he was elected as a Democrat to Congress and served there until 1909. He was a progressive Democrat, attacking tariffs on the ground that they favored the business over the working man. He helped Woodrow Wilson win the 1912 Democratic National Convention slot, and when Wilson was elected president, he hoped to be appointed to Attorney General. He was instead offered the position of Secretary of War, but he refused on the grounds that he was a man of peace. As a Quaker War Secretary, I should consider myself a living illustration of a horrible incongruity. Wilson asked Palmer to give up his congressional post and run for the Senate in the 1914 elections. Palmer did, and lost. Thanks, boss. He waited for better times and bumped around different positions after leaving Congress. When World War I broke out, Palmer tried to smooth over his Quaker background. Yeah, I bet he did. Going as far as to say he would carry a gun as a private. Soon Woodrow Wilson asked him to take the post of alien property custodian. And no, he is not cleaning up trash. He accepted and quickly began seizing and selling alien property. He could put any money that he took into Liberty bonds. And the man wasn't seizing little small sums in private homes, but often large companies such as H. Huberger, which was worth almost $2 million, or even mass stocks worth of $28 million. And according to the New York Times, he had an army of 140,000 lawyers to help him hunt down these alien funds. I find that a little hard to believe. I mean, you have to pay these guys, and I don't know, 28 million would be enough. Anyway, Palmer believed that the German industry in America was there as a spy center, filled with German agents plotting against the safety of the United States. Apparently, they were part of a great German plan for military and commercial domination of the world. And his goal, he said, was to make an absolute divorce between German capital and American industry. By August of 1918, the New York Times reported that Palmer had seized $500 million in alien property. He can pay off his lawyers now. March 1919 rolled around, and Palmer finally received his Attorney General appointment. Then anarchist bombs started going off. The first explosion took off the hands of a maid who had opened a package intended for Senator Thomas W. Hardwick. 16 bombs similarly packaged were found in the Postal Service, all addressed to prominent government officials, one of which was new Attorney General Palmer. Shortly after, 16 more bombs were found, and 7 explosions destroyed some homes, a couple public buildings, and 1 rectory. Palmer was again targeted. On June 1st, some incompetent thug crept to his house after they had gone to bed, hoping to plant the bomb and make his escape to enjoy the destruction from a safe distance. But he tripped on the porch steps, dropping or throwing the bomb in the process, and his glorious anarchist plans turned into a quick remodeling of his appendages and the Palmer's living room and porch. Anarchist leaflets blew from some pocket of the would-be assassin were found around the area, and they declared to the democratic lords of the autocratic republic that a class war was on, and would not cease but for a complete victory for the international proletariat. The public already distrusted Russians and Bolsheviks and anything that could be allied with Lenin's Russians. The anarchists were close enough, and anarchists toting explosives were so crazy they had to be Russian. The Red Scare was officially on. Many called for Palmer to act. He did. By August, he formed the General Intelligence Division, special branch of the Bureau of Investigation, and put a young lawyer, J. Edgar Hoover, in charge of it. Hoover did what every good intelligence agent does. He organized a complex filing system of 200,000 cross-indexed cards. These contained information on 60,000 people and many organizations that the government considered potentially dangerous, or rather potentially red. However, the American people did not want index cards. Since the race riots of July, people's fears of red Bolshevism and anarchism had only increased. Plus, two communist parties had emerged from two different Chicago conventions. Hysterical estimates grossly exaggerated their membership, sometimes stating that they had forces of up to 600,000 members. The people shouted at Congress and Palmer to do something, and everyone knows that Congress can't possibly do anything wrong, so they officially reprimanded Palmer and demanded that he do something and explain his current inaction. Palmer was now convinced by his staff and his experts that there really was a looming threat. So when November came, Palmer did something. He ordered federal agents to round up suspects from the Russian people's houses in 9 cities. Agents muscled everyone out, then rummaged through the buildings, knocking over furniture, rolling over rugs, and overturning bookshelves, all in the vain attempt to find weapons or some incriminating evidence. Using deportation trials, which were small and relatively quick, Palmer was able to deport 250 aliens to Russia. Never mind that more than half the people rounded up had to be released the first night, and never mind that no warrant was ever produced. Palmer got results, and that is what people wanted. After the November raid, Palmer's popularity soared, but he wasn't finished yet. He had gotten hundreds the first time. Now he would get thousands and finally crush this Bolshevik anarchist thing, this Redvolution. In order to do that quickly, Palmer wanted to remove all those annoying restraints that protected the potential deportation candidates. Palmer requested that Secretary of Labor Wilson, not Woodrow Wilson, remove the section in the deportation that allowed aliens to receive counsel. He also asked for a warrant that would hold for any person they might happen to pick up once the raid started. Wilson, like the good human being he was, refused. Palmer tried again, saying that often lawbreakers were protected by legal safeguards more often than the innocent. Wilson ignored him. Palmer might have been stuck, but then Wilson got sick, and his replacement proved much more cooperative. By December 29th, the rules were altered so that those arrested were not required to be told they had a right to counsel, or even to be told the charges against them. Palmer issued 3,000 warrants with a fill-in-the-blank for the name. Federal agents were told to meet with the suspects and to bring as many aliens as they could find. Furthermore, they were instructed to use their own discretion to gain access to the aliens. The raid went off on January 2nd. All 3,000 warrants were used, and some 2,000 extra were brought in. Palmer was now a national hero, yet it was not to last. Soon reports of abuse began leaking their way into the papers. Some men had been arrested because they looked like radicals. Another was arrested because he asked what was going on. More simply because they were seen reading what was thought to be a Russian newspaper or anarchist pamphlet. The federal agents often had been needlessly violent. Instead of showing warrants, they showed guns. Investigations into the raid provided plenty for lawyers to work with. 6th and 8th Amendments had been broken, and warrants had often not been sworn or signed. Only 550 of the 5,000 brought in were deported. Hoping to bring himself back into popularity, Palmer predicted a massive red uprising for May 1st. The police mobilized, going so far as to mount machine guns on their cars, but the rising never happened, and Palmer's glory went out. Palmer's remembered for his raids, and they are remembered as his project, but they are really America's raids. They are what the public asked for. The public said to do something, and Palmer did.